Ah, my friends, listen for a moment to the quiet whisper beneath the clamor of your daily lives. Life, as it flows through you, is not a puzzle to be solved, a riddle to be cracked, or a ledger to be balanced. Yet here you are, marching with the discipline of a soldier, trying to straighten every crooked line, arrange every scattered piece, and predict every future moment. And in doing so, you miss the music that plays in the spaces between your carefully measured steps. Imagine holding a river in your hands, squeezing it tightly, thinking that by controlling the flow, you are mastering it, but the harder you clutch, the more it slips away, until all you feel is the wetness of your frustration. Life, my friends, is more like dancing in that river, letting the current move you, your feet tracing patterns you could never have imagined, yet patterns that are perfectly yours. Consider the child who plays with a toy boat on a stream. She does not ask, will it reach the ocean? She does not fret about the currents, the eddies, the rocks in the way. She watches, laughs, lets it spin, float, sink, or turn. The boat is not a problem to solve, and if you will permit yourself to see your life as such a toy boat, perhaps you will recognize that anxiety, striving, and relentless planning are illusions you have mistaken for necessity. The more you attempt to control life, the more it rebels. The universe is not a mechanical clock. It does not tick to the rhythm of your commands. It is a dance, a melody, a wave that rises and falls, carrying all things along, whether you understand the pattern or not. We are taught, from a very early age, that life's purpose is to accumulate, to achieve, to succeed. And yet, in chasing these shadows, we often overlook the very essence of existence. The Stoic teaches us to embrace what is beyond our control, to find peace not in mastery of events, but in mastery of our minds. And mastery, I say, is not domination. It is understanding, acceptance, and above all, flow. Can you imagine what it would be like to meet each day not with a list of tasks, but with the curiosity of a child, the patience of a tree, the openness of the sky? Here, let me offer you another image. Think of life as a vast, intricate tapestry. Every thread, every color, every knot is part of a whole you cannot see in its entirety. You might feel tempted to tug at a thread, to straighten a line, to remove a color you find unpleasant. But the moment you interfere, you risk unraveling the pattern. The Stoic way is to see yourself not as the weaver who must correct everything, but as a part of the tapestry itself, moving in harmony with the unfolding design. This is not resignation, my friends, it is liberation. Liberation from the illusion that life is your problem to solve, and freedom to live as the problem itself dissolves in the dance of being. Notice how you carry your anxieties as if they were stones in a sack. You lug them, step by step, through the corridors of your mind, thinking each one must be arranged, categorized, and conquered. But what if you set the sack down? What if you allowed the stones to be, as they are, without judgment? You would discover that the ground beneath you does not collapse. The world does not fall apart. In fact, the simple act of letting go, the Stoic act of acceptance, reveals a clarity, a spaciousness that had been hidden behind your striving. Life is not a riddle. It is a river, a dance, a melody. And your joy lies not in solving it, but in moving with it, feeling its currents, laughing as it carries you. And yet, so often, we confuse struggle with purpose. We think that to wrestle with life is to live fully, that to resist the inevitable is to assert our power. But consider the wind. It does not fight the trees, it bends them. And in bending, the trees do not break. The river does not argue with the rocks. It flows around them, over them, even through them, and in doing so, discovers its path naturally. So, too, with our own lives, the harder we try to fix everything, the more we strain against the natural course of things, and the more we suffer. Stoicism, in its quiet wisdom, reminds us that true strength is not in opposition, but in graceful acceptance, in aligning ourselves with the current instead of resisting it. Imagine sitting by a quiet lake at dawn. The water is still, yet beneath the surface, currents move, unseen, shaping the lake itself. You do not need to stir the water to make it real. Its life unfolds whether you touch it or not. Life, in this sense, is exactly like that lake, full of depth and motion beyond your grasp, full of patterns you may never fully see, yet utterly complete in its own unfolding. When you stop treating life as a problem to solve, you begin to see the subtle beauty in the ordinary. The way sunlight glints on leaves, the sound of a bird breaking morning silence, the rhythm of your own breath. These are the truths the mind, obsessed with solutions, often overlooks. And think for a moment about control. How much of life's anxiety comes from our desperate attempts to manipulate the uncontrollable? We try to master people, events, circumstances, and even time itself. But what is time but a series of now moments flowing without our permission? What is control but the illusion of holding the formless, grasping at shadows, trying to make the universe conform to the limits of our imagination? The Stoic invites us to release this grip, to recognize that we are not the ultimate governors of life. And paradoxically, in letting go, in admitting our smallness, we discover a profound freedom. We are no longer battling the river. We are the river, moving in harmony with its endless unfolding. Consider the story of a man who spent his life trying to straighten the bends in a wild river near his home. Every day he shoveled, redirected, and dammed, believing that the river must obey his will. And every day, the river carved new paths, overflowed his banks, and laughed at his efforts. One day, weary and frustrated, he sat by its edge and simply watched. The water reflected the sky, shimmered with sunlight, and sang in gentle ripples. And in that stillness, he realized something astonishing. The river had never been his enemy. He had been his own tormentor, believing life was a problem to solve, when in truth, it was a song to hear, a dance to join. The key, then, is to shift your perspective from battle to participation. You do not solve life, you experience it. You do not conquer it, you accompany it. And in doing so, the small anxieties that once dominated your mind begin to dissolve. The Stoic path is one of understanding, patience, and gentle observation, noticing the tides of fortune and misfortune, recognizing which things you can influence and which you cannot. And in that recognition, finding serenity. Life, at its core, is neither hostile nor welcoming. It simply is. And when you stop treating it as a problem, you awaken to the reality that every moment is already whole, already complete, and already alive. And so, my friends, pause for a moment and breathe. Feel the rhythm of your own life, the beat of your heart, the rise and fall of your chest, the silent pulse that moves you forward. Nothing needs to be fixed, nothing needs to be solved. The stones, the rivers, the wind, they all move without anxiety, without calculation. And in noticing their effortless flow, you may glimpse the truth that life itself is not a puzzle, but a melody, a dance, a song that you are not merely witnessing but participating in. And once you participate, fully, without the burden of solving, without the obsession with control, a quiet joy emerges, a joy that is not earned, but simply realized. Now, imagine the mind as a vast garden, each thought as a plant, each emotion a flower, each desire a vine that grows in its own time and place. You may feel tempted to prune every branch, pull every weed, and arrange each blossom according to a rigid design. But the garden, like life, has its own intelligence. Some weeds turn out to be beautiful flowers. Some flowers wither only to enrich the soil for the next season. The Stoic teaches us that wisdom lies not in forcing the garden to conform to our whims, but in observing, in tending gently, and in recognizing the inherent order in its seeming chaos. Life, therefore, is not a problem to solve. It is a garden to inhabit, to walk through, and to marvel at. Consider, too, the paradox of effort. We think that striving is the path to fulfillment, yet too often, our striving is blind, pushing against the very current that carries us. There is a story of a fisherman who casts his net tirelessly, pulling and dragging, never satisfied with the catch. One day, he sat by the water and allowed the net to drift, following the flow. Miraculously, he caught more fish than ever before. Effort, when aligned with the natural rhythm of life, is fruitful. Effort that resists the flow leads only to frustration. The Stoic teaches us to discern this difference, to apply our energy where it harmonizes with life, and to release the rest. And what of loss, my friends? How often we treat death, change, or failure as enemies to be defeated. Yet all that we call loss is part of the natural pattern, a necessary turning in the dance of existence. Consider the autumn leaf. It does not cling desperately to the branch, fearing the end. It falls, and in falling nourishes the earth, becomes part of the cycle that allows new leaves to emerge. So too with our moments, our relationships, our fortunes. By refusing to cling, we discover that nothing is ever truly lost. It is transformed, integrated, and returned to the whole. Life is not a problem to solve. It is a cycle to flow within, a river in which everything, even what seems cruel or chaotic, finds its place. There is another subtle truth here. When we abandon the notion that life must be conquered, we awaken to its beauty in ways previously obscured. The wind in the trees, the laughter of a child, the soft warmth of sunlight on your skin, these are not rewards for solving life's problems. They are the life itself, present, immediate, unavoidable in its wonder. The Stoic mind does not chase or hoard these moments. It allows them to be, to fill consciousness with their quiet magnificence. And in this allowance, a serenity arises that is not dependent on circumstance, a joy that is not conditional, a freedom that is effortless. And so, perhaps the most radical act of all is to stop trying so hard, to stop measuring, calculating, planning, and controlling, to let life unfold around you and within you, to move with its rhythm rather than against it. The river, the garden, the autumn leaf, they teach us that existence is not a puzzle demanding an answer. It is a vast, flowing, living mystery that invites participation, wonder, and deep listening. And when you listen, truly, the need to solve evaporates, leaving only the clarity and quiet delight of simply being. Breathe now, my friends. Feel the stillness that is always present beneath thought, the vast openness beneath struggle. Life is not a problem to solve, but a dance to join, a melody to inhabit, a river in which you are both water and current, observer and participant. And in this simple realization, the weight of anxiety, the illusion of control, the compulsion to conquer all of it melts away, leaving only the pure, effortless, radiant experience of living. And yet, even as you hear these words, the mind may resist. It whispers, But what about tomorrow? What about failure? What about the wrong choices? And here's the subtlety. The very act of trying to anticipate and control the future is what makes life seem heavy, complicated, unsolvable. Consider a bird in flight. It does not calculate each beat of its wings. It does not worry about storms it may encounter. It responds, moment by moment, to the air around it, adjusting instinctively, fully alive to the present. This is the freedom we forget we possess. Life is not a ledger of deeds and consequences to manage. It is a series of living moments to inhabit with grace, attention, and joy. Let me tell you of a man who spent years meticulously planning every detail of his life, believing that precision was the key to happiness. He scheduled his meals, his work, even his friendships, with the careful hand of a clockmaker. Yet he found himself perpetually anxious, perpetually unsatisfied, because life refused to fit his plan. One evening, weary of his own rigidity, he wandered into a forest and simply walked. He noticed the way the trees swayed, the way the light shifted across the leaves, the way a small stream sang as it moved over rocks. And in that walking he felt a strange lightness, a release from the constant need to control. For the first time he understood that life's richness is not in solving problems, but in being present for its unfolding. And this is the heart of Stoic wisdom. The recognition that much of what we call problems are in fact the natural rhythms of life. Illness, loss, uncertainty, and change, they are not enemies, but teachers. Reminders of the impermanence and flow inherent in all things. When you stop treating these experiences as obstacles, and instead as currents to move with, you find yourself less burdened, more expansive, and remarkably alert to the subtleties of living. The Stoic does not flee hardship, nor does he cling to comfort. He engages with life honestly, observing without clinging, participating without demanding, moving with the rhythm of the universe rather than imposing his will upon it. Imagine standing at the edge of the ocean. The waves crash and recede, some violently, some gently, some in patterns you cannot predict. You cannot stop the waves, nor can you control their timing or strength. But you can step into the water, feel its flow, and let it carry you. The ocean is not a problem to solve. It is a presence to be experienced, and life, in its infinite complexity, mirrors this ocean. The storms, the calm, the unexpected twists all are part of its natural movement. To grasp at solutions, to demand certainty, is to struggle against the very essence of existence. To surrender, to be present, to flow, that is wisdom. And here, my friends, is a paradox worth pondering. When you cease trying to master life, when you stop framing existence as a problem, you discover a mastery far deeper. For mastery is not in control, but in understanding. Not in conquering, but in perceiving the patterns, rhythms, and currents that already exist. It is in knowing that you are both river and swimmer, both leaf and tree, both observer and participant in a vast, flowing, magnificent dance. Life then is not something to be solved. It is something to be lived, moment by moment, breath by breath, with a sense of wonder and an openness to the mystery that never ends. So pause, breathe, and notice. Notice the small things that have always been present but unseen, the ordinary miracles you have taken for granted, the rustle of leaves, the touch of wind on your skin, the heartbeat that carries you forward. Life is not a problem to solve. It is the very act of being itself, vast, mysterious, and infinitely alive. And when you step into this understanding, when you allow yourself to participate rather than dominate, you find a serenity that is beyond calculation, a joy that cannot be measured, and a freedom that has always been yours, waiting quietly beneath the surface of striving. And as you dwell in this awareness, you may begin to notice something remarkable. The very effort to control, to solve life, is what obscures its beauty. Like a painter who stares too intently at a canvas, trying to force each stroke, we miss the spontaneous harmonies, the subtle interplay of light and shadow, the unexpected moments of brilliance that arise when we loosen our grip. The Stoic insight is to cultivate attention without obsession, to act with intention without attachment to outcomes, to move through life as a musician moves through a melody-aware present, but never trying to crush the notes into submission. Life, after all, is improvisation, and the moment you stop resisting, the music begins to flow. Consider, for a moment, the dance of seasons. Winter does not argue with spring. Spring does not lament the passing of summer. Autumn falls gracefully into winter, and the cycle continues, perfectly without struggle, entirely without complaint. And yet, human beings persist in treating every moment as a crisis, every change as a problem to fix. But when you step back and witness the unfolding of nature, you realize that struggle is optional. The trees do not worry that their leaves will fall. The rivers do not fret over where they will bend. There is an effortless intelligence inherent in the world, a rhythm and harmony that operates beyond calculation. The Stoic teaches us to align ourselves with this rhythm, to flow with it rather than resist it, and in doing so, to experience the profound peace that comes when the mind ceases to fight what already is. And what of desire, my friends? How often we strive not simply to live, but to possess, to attain, to secure what is fleeting and transient. Yet the Stoic path reminds us that clinging to impermanent things is the very source of suffering. Consider the wind blowing through the branches. It cannot be held, it cannot be caged, yet its passage brings beauty, movement, and life. So too with our experiences, relationships, and fortunes. They are not possessions. They are invitations, moments to engage with fully and then release. To live fully is not to capture and hoard, but to participate, to taste, to savor, and then to let go. And in this letting go, we discover that we are already whole, that nothing we seek outside ourselves can add to the completeness that is our inherent nature. Now, think of life as a vast, flowing river of events, sensations, and experiences. You might feel compelled to, damn it, to redirect it, to measure it with human logic and reasoning. But the river will not be constrained. Its power is not in submission, but in its endless movement. Similarly, your life's currents cannot be fully contained by willpower or intellect. The Stoic approach is to observe, to participate, to respond wisely where you can, and to release attachment where you cannot. In doing so, you discover that life's seeming problems are simply the natural flow of events, and that peace arises not from solving, but from attuning yourself to the rhythm already present. And so, my friends, the final invitation is simple yet profound. Stop treating life as a problem to solve. Stop struggling against the flow. Stop clutching desperately at control. Stop fearing the unknown. Instead, step into the current, breathe deeply, and move with life as it unfolds. Notice the small miracles, the subtle harmonies, the ordinary magnificence that exists at every moment. Participate fully, but without grasping. Observe closely, but without judgment. And in this letting go, in this full participation without control, you awaken to the truth that life has never been a problem, but always a mystery, a dance, a song, a river in which you are both water and current, both observer and participant, both student and teacher of the infinite now.